You're outside so you can sing along. This is not Zoom, you've got the words in front of you. Good afternoon.
No sound again.
We're just checking if you can hear us. Questions about whether you can hear us?
I'm getting a thumbs up.
Yeah, thumbs up. Okay, I think we're good. So many people have said, are they actually really doing the building? Is it really happening? Quite extraordinary when you look at how far we've already come. So today we officially mark the start of this amazing construction project with a ritual that allows us to look back, to see where we are today and to look forward. We're really grateful to be joined in person by members of BOC, by council members, by members of the fundraising team, by people without whom this project would not have happened, and by members of our staff team. Especially also to be joined by those of you on Zoom who have opted for a slightly less wet and less stylish option. As we have become accustomed, we acknowledge our excitement and our gratitude for reaching a milestone moment with the words of Shehatianu. I believe those words are somewhere online that you can find. Hopefully there'll be a link in the chat. And those of you who are here have a laminated copy. We'd love you to join us. They say that you can't really know where you're going if you don't know where you've been. So we start together by acknowledging and giving honour to the history of our community in this space, albeit looking a little bit different than it does now. Perhaps you remember when the youth centre was our only building, the jumble sales helped to allow us to afford our first Torah scroll, or later when we received our first check scroll. The dedication service for our main hall, attended by our local MP at the time before she became Prime Minister. Perhaps you remember those incredibly comfy brown chairs up in the old library and down in the small hall. Perhaps you remember when we finally fitted an actual ceiling on the inside of the main hall, or when the toilets were refreshed and painted blue. Perhaps you remember when the beautiful sculpture was added to the hallway, or when the new porta cabins were added to the kindergarten. This space has seen us grow and change in so many ways. Perhaps you remember when we used to host our homeless guests for lunch on Thursdays as the precursor to Homeless Action in Barnet. Perhaps you remember being in the synagogue the day after Yitzhak Rabin was tragically killed, desperately coming together in the hope of peace. Perhaps you remember the first night we hosted our Somali Brabanese friends for Ramadan prayers in our main hall, or any one of the extraordinary calls to action in the sermons or teachings by one of our rabbis, Henry Goldstein, Jeffrey Newman, Howard Cooper, or any of the rabbis and teachers who are a gift to our community by being a part of us. Perhaps you remember the induction of our extraordinary leader and wise guide, our senior rabbi, Miriam Berger, or the time when we opened the London Citizens meetings with a set of shofar blasts. Our community has always been on the front of social action and change, never afraid to step outside the box, to step into the water, to go first, never afraid to stand up and be counted. Perhaps you remember one of the many incredible youth events that were created in this space, the creation of Friday groups so long before its time, the extraordinary weekend residential, where you might have slept on the bima or policed the space as madrakin, just hoping that the children might finally go to sleep. Perhaps we can hear our community coming together in song, singing songs from the 60s from the old Shiran on a Friday night, or singing more recent Jewish compositions, sometimes even led by the composers themselves. Perhaps you can still hear the harmonies echoing around the building during Shirei Haggadah, or the ruach of the rhythm and Jews and biyachad teams leading us in song, perhaps even at an indoor bonfire. Perhaps you can hear the joy as we celebrated Simchat Torah with Shir, or recall the solemnity of Kol Nidre as we've decamped so many times around North London. Perhaps you can reflect personally on your own smachot, a baby blessing, a B'nai Mitzvah, a wedding, an anniversary, or perhaps you've been comforted during Shiva, Yahrzeit, or during Yizkor here. We've always come together to lift our voices in prayer, to sing, to plead, to hope. We found God here in this very place, perhaps even when we weren't expecting to do so. We are a community whose strength only increases when we come together, and we've done so in many ways, more recently even on Zoom. Perhaps you've been here from the beginning, perhaps you've joined more recently. We each have our own memories of this space. From the 20 families in 1960 who felt called to the blessing of Lech Lecha to become a blessing as a new community, the more than 900 families who are now part of our community. We've grown and changed. We've stood up and been counted. We've supported and celebrated. But most of all, we've never stood still. Matovu ohalecha Yaakov mishkenotecha Yisrael. How extraordinary is this place that we call our tent and our dwelling place. Something very dear to me. In our Hallel song, we sing the words of the psalmist.
Evan Ma'asu Habonim Haitala Roshkina. The stone that the builders cast aside, put down, put away, didn't see as important, rejected maybe, has become the cornerstone. A strong image, and we often use it to talk about inclusion. I wonder this afternoon, if instead it might offer us an image of rebuilding that helps us understand the opportunity that rebuilding gives us to examine the way our community is built, both structurally and physically, by its members. How different might this situation have been had we been building a year ago? What stones that are now cornerstones of our experience of community might have been left to the side? The pandemic has been a time of bringing down walls, not just of this building, but also hidden walls that were keeping people in so many different ways from participating in synagogue life. Hidden walls maybe in our own minds about what a synagogue is capable of, how we can handle change. And it's enabled us to build with a vision of inclusion and to create a building that facilitates informal encounter. In this moment where both physical walls and the walls around our idea of community are lowered, we can look around, notice those stones, and rebuild with this huge period of transformation and learning informing our actions. The story of the Jewish people is so often one of leaving, learning, and returning. And as we build, we dream of the future. Al Tukrabanai Ela Bonai. Don't say children, rather builders, thought the rabbi. We aren't going back. We're going forwards. We aren't going back, we're going forward. We're building a space for generations who built FRS to where it is today, and the generations who will be the builders of tomorrow. It's a space to dream and to give life to new images of community that we could not even imagine before. And so we sing the words of Debbie Friedman quoting the Book of Job, the old shouting dream, and you still have longer microphones.
Childhood was my fantasy, born as we learned and told. The world would not feel in me, to understand small worlds and more. I thought I grew up on hinterland, but life was not a game. And heroes were just people, but we all know our name. And the old shall be the day, and the new shall be the day, and our home will rise up to the sky. We must live for today, we must live for tomorrow. We must fight, we must stand, we must rise. Now I know the years have passed, I've come to understand that strength is dreaming, and my voice sounds like a call. My heart of my future, till I embrace my call. I promise to pursue and challenge what I heard, so now you know that we all shall be and we shall see vision, and our hope shall rise up in the sky. We must live for today. We must build for tomorrow. Give us time, give us strength. Give us time, give us time. Give us time, give us strength. Give us time.
The builders don't see mud and seals like we do. They show us around this site with the vision of what it is to become. They talk us through it, hoping to share the future. From the column there to just by the mixer is the main hall, the offices, the kindergarten. They can describe so perfectly what these steels, this bricks and mortar will become. And yet, we know that's only the beginning. When Bob and Simon and Mike, who have tirelessly pored over spreadsheets, contracts and ideas, when they see these steels, they see members flooding in for services, for learning and for social opportunities. When Charles and Alan, Richard and Roger, who've agonized over finances and the practicalities of making it work, see the diggers and the tools, they see generations to come, feeling so at home in this place, knowing it will become the focal point of our memories and so many places for life cycle marking moments. When Kathy and Paul and Helen see this wonderful site, they see the beauty of the designs that they helped to formulate, enabling a spirituality to flow from the rooftops and the opportunity for ritual sewn into its fibers. When Andrew and Paul and Susie see the mud and rain, they can see the values that the community spirits and the outward facing windows they've baked into this process, knowing it will inform how we behave in the building and as neighbours and as Jews and as responsible human beings. The list of people who have got us to this point is huge because it involves every donor, every person who shared an idea or a hope, every member who voted to say, yes, we can, and every member of staff who constantly goes above and beyond to be the very best version of the community we can become. And yet, we're building far more than a building. We're building the future as it should be. We're creating community as we know it has the potential to be for our 900 families and for others who join us on the way. And then this version of society can continue to be replicated, and we can truly partner in the creation of a corner of the world that mirrors the visions that our prophets taught. So as we stand here, open to the elements, we remember that as a people, we went from succor-seeking wilderness wanderers to rooted dwellers in communities across the world. So from these succor-like beginnings, we can see a future which this structure will house, but whose influence will stretch far beyond four walls. Our future based on our own 4 R's: ritual, relationships, receiving, being radical. Ritual, using our thousands of years of Jewish heritage and ritual to mark time, make meaning, and to ensure the weight of responsibility of holding such a tradition continues to give us the passion to preserve our link in the chain of tradition. It's ritual that makes us community, gives us our own identity, connecting us to the past and making us responsible for the future. Relationships. Knowing that society as it should be is based on us being in relationship with one another, knowing each other, being responsible for one another, and knowing that those connections stop us drifting from the core of what drives us. We're individuals with stories to tell, which need to be known by each other in order to understand one another. We need to be ready to receive, to listen, to look well beyond the vanity and hear the stories of many others near and far. We need to extend ourselves, come out of our comfort zone and stop looking inwards, but look out to the world through the unique Jewish lens through which our values are framed. And we shouldn't be scared to be the radical ones, radically relational. When we're ready to act and do what's right, we don't need to wait until there's someone to follow. We can be the ones to speak out, to act, to reform society, and to start creating the world as it should be. In this building, we'll pray for a better world. From this building, we'll act to bring about that better world. In this building, we'll study Jewish sources and practice to love our neighbors as ourselves. From this building, we'll show others how society can be. We'll truly be prepared to create a sanctuary in which God can dwell among us. God, prepare me to be a sanctuary. God, prepare me to be a sanctuary. Pure and holy, tried and true, tried and true. With thanksgiving, I'll be a living sanctuary for you. Sanctuary for you. Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu, Sur Yisrael, our God and God of our ancestors, Rock of Israel. We ask for your blessing at this sacred time, as we gather together to mark the beginning of this process of rebuilding, a building of our new Beit Tefillah, our Beit Midrash, our Beit Knesset, to be dedicated to you and your worship. Guide us to build an altar befitting your holiness, a sanctuary worthy of your presence, a community founded in your image, where young and old may rejoice to come before you, to learn your truth and to seek your guidance. May it be your will to prosper the progress of this structure. May its foundations be laid in righteousness, so its walls may be called salvation and its gates praise. May neither hurt nor harm come to any who labor here. May this framework, which we see forming today, be well-founded, a sure support of all that rests upon it. May we continue to build together in friendship and goodwill, with justice in our hearts, and live to dedicate it in happiness. Prosalenu sukat shalom mecha, spread over us a shelter of your peace. Adonai yishmor tzetacha uvoecha, me'ata ve'ad olam. May God guard our going out and our coming in, now and forevermore.
Amen.
We will join together in a matter of months when we can put our mezuzah on the door, which, oh, where's the door going to be? We'll be over there a little bit further over to put the mezuzah on, thinking, gosh, isn't the weather so much nicer than it was when we last stood out here? A huge mazel tov to everybody who is here, who have got us to this moment, and a huge thank you to everybody who has put in so many hours, so much time and so much money into getting us to this place. I can't wait to be celebrating the next bits on the journey with you.
Oh, wasn't that wonderful? I feel very emotional. Is everyone else feeling very emotional?
Absolutely fantastic. Wonderful. Thank you very much.